Yep.
And in order to qualify, you had to have certain income limitations. There was, I believe, 17 different income limits that you could be at to qualify. But no matter what your income was and which income limit you used to qualify, you could only have $2,000 in assets. And if you had more than $2,000 in assets, then you did not qualify for Medi-Cal. And so it caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. And the state of California said, okay, we need to fix that. And so, in typical California fashion, they overreacted and didn't do their due diligence. And instead of putting a new asset limitation, they completely removed the asset limitation. So from January 1st, 2024 until the end of this year, December 31st, you could have any amount of assets. You could be a billionaire. And as long as your income was low enough, you could still qualify for the state to pay for your medical insurance. Well, obviously, after paying for quite a bit more in medical costs than the state of California
Yep.
anticipated, they said, wait a minute, we need to fix this because it's affecting our budget. And so in July, they passed this bill and it goes into effect January 1st. And what it's going to do is it's going to put asset limitations back on this. And what that means is that if you are currently on Medi-Cal and you are over the asset limitation, you're going to get denied and you're going to lose your health insurance on January 1st. If you are planning on applying for Medi-Cal within the next about 3 years, a little bit less, and you have more than the asset limitation, they're going to deny you and you're not going to qualify for it. But there's ways to plan around it and get your assets so that you can still have benefit of your assets, but they're not counted on the Medi-Cal application. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Okay. And Phil, are they, how are people finding out about this? I mean, it's always seems to be an issue where people just get hit, blindsided because there's just not a lot of communication that goes out that gets to people, right?
Yeah, it's funny because normally I find out about things like this pretty quickly, but I didn't even find out about this until a couple months after the bill passed. And the only reason I found out is because a client of mine got a letter from
Oh
Medi-Cal.
yeah. Yeah.
And so they're supposed to be mailing out letters, but in typical government fashion, doesn't matter if it's state, federal government, any government, they're not efficient and they may miss you. So even though you didn't get a letter, that doesn't mean you're not affected. If you're on Medi-Cal, you need to set up a free consultation to see if we can help you or if it's even going to affect you at all.
Okay. All right. You want to get into some of the asset structuring, protection strategies, income planning?
Yeah, we can do that. So there's, excuse me. So right now, there is no look back period. What that means is that if you have assets over the limit, and let's talk about the limits and everything
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Let's get into that.
So what's going to happen is right now, again, there's no asset limitation. What's going to happen is as of January 1st, the asset limitation is going to go to $130,000 for an individual and $195,000 for a couple. They're going to potentially, depending on the eligibility, give you 65,000 more for each dependent in your home. But there's a lot of eligibility requirements that make that that'll qualify or not qualify that. So you really want to make sure that your assets are under those limits. Let's just say you're an individual. We're going to talk about that right now. So $130,000. So you look at your portfolio and you go, well, I own my home, I own my car, I have some retirement accounts, maybe I have some life insurance, things along those lines. And you say that's all worth a lot more than 130,000, especially if you have a house in California. It's hard to find real estate in California for less than $1 million, let alone less than 130,000.
Yeah.
And so the government does realize that, and this was part of the old rule as well. There was some exemptions. There were certain assets that didn't count towards the limitation. So things like your home, a personal vehicle, certain retirement accounts, up to a certain amount of value in life insurance. For those of you that don't know, there's a couple types of life insurance. There's term life and there's cash value life. Term life, you don't have to worry about. You can have, a $10 million term life policy and it's not a big deal. That doesn't count towards this. But if you have a cash value policy, the cash inside there will count. And so you need to be mindful of what that cash value inside your policy is to see if that's going to disqualify you as well.
And Phil, what I just got a question on that cash value. Do you see that often out there where um is it a common life insurance tool where people are building up cash there?
Absolutely. I mean, we recommend that for almost all of our clients. There's only two ways to have a tax-free investment: a Roth IRA, which is capped off at 6,500 because it's such a great investment, and then life insurance. Those are the
Yeah.
only two ways to get yourself a tax-free retirement income or tax-free investment period. And so we highly recommend that our clients use life insurance. There's many forms of life insurance to
Yeah.
invest. And so, yeah, a lot of our clients have that.
Got it. Okay.
The other thing that's also exempt would be if you have prepaid like burial plots and things like that, up to a certain value. They're anything 15,000 or less, they consider exempt. I honestly don't know. I haven't looked in a long time. I don't know what burial plots cost, but I feel like 15,000 is plenty for one.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh, so then what was the question you asked? I can get
Well,
into
as we get
that
into some of the
now.
strategies
Oh,
to
strategies, correct.
structure, yeah.
So what you got to do is you got to look at all your assets, go through all the formulas, see what's exempt, what's not exempt, and see if you're over that 130,000 limit. If you are, then you have a couple of options on how to get rid of your assets. The first one is gifting. You can gift those assets to children, grandchildren, friends, family, employees, coworkers, whoever you want to gift it to. But you got to be careful there. There are tax issues with gifting. A lot of people don't realize that if you gift a certain amount of money to somebody in a particular year and it's over the IRS set amount for that year, then you have to pay tax on it. Not the person receiving the gift, you do. It's called a gift tax. So that's something that needs to be addressed with gifting.
What are the limits there for gifting? Like, what can you
Uh,
gift before you get nailed?
yeah, so it changes every year. Right now, this year, it's 19,000, and it's expected to stay the same next year. It looks like it may not actually change. Um,
Okay. And so what type of things would somebody in a situation like this gift to their kids where it would make sense? Like, what would be a case scenario there?
if you have any of those assets I spoke of, the most likely things would be if you have a second home, like a rental home or a vacation home, that's going to completely disqualify you. You'd have to gift that away. Obviously, that's worth a lot more than 19,000. So you got to do some strategies to make sure you don't end up paying gift tax, which could be worse than having to pay, not qualifying for Medi-Cal.
Right.
Stock portfolios, brokerage accounts, cryptocurrency, all of those things count towards the 130,000 asset limit. And so you may need to gift those away as well. Uh, Life insurance, again, if your cash value is too high, although that gets, you can't really just gift the cash value in a life insurance. Technically, you could borrow from it and give the cash away, but that's a pretty bad idea. That could affect your policy. So those are the types of assets that you could gift.
Got
A
it.
better strategy is to use an irrevocable trust.
Okay.
There's a Medi-Cal asset protection trust out there that's available. You can set up a Medi-Cal, and we call those MAPS, MAPTS. You can put your assets into these Medi-Cal. Oh, let me back up a second. The other problem with gifting is those assets are gone. Whoever you've
Right.
given them to has no obligation to do whatever with those. You can't put restrictions on it. It's theirs, and they can do whatever they want, and they don't ever have to give it back to you if you ever want it back. Versus if you use a irrevocable trust, Medi-Cal asset protection trust, there's a potential for you to continue to use the assets, and the person that's eventually going to get the assets doesn't have any control over it. You can still continue, if it's a brokerage account or cryptocurrency, you can still buy, trade, and sell with it. It just really depends on what your goals are with those assets. Do you really want to get rid of them forever, or do you really want to retain some control and potential use of them?
And Phil, the Medi-Cal asset protection irrevocable trust, if you could explain, this is not a revocable living trust that most people
Good point.
have or
Yeah.
should have. Can you explain the difference between those two trusts, and then maybe we'll get into this one a little bit and how it's set up?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when most people think of a trust, they're thinking about a revocable living trust. That's done as part of your estate plan with your will, your power of attorney, and healthcare directive. Excuse me. This is a completely separate trust. It would be done in conjunction with your estate plan. You still need to have an estate plan for those excludable assets and the assets under 130,000 that you have. So you would still have a revocable living trust, but you would also have this separate irrevocable trust. And I know it sounds a little overwhelming because it's it's called an irrevocable trust, meaning you can't revoke it. However, over the many decades irrevocable trusts have been around, there is almost always a way to change it. You can change just about every provision of an irrevocable trust nowadays, but only if the trust is set up right from the start. And a lot of trusts aren't. I see a lot of life insurance trusts, especially older life insurance trusts, that just they don't have the provisions to make them changeable, and so they really truly are irrevocable. And if you have a divorce, or you have a new child, or a family member or beneficiary die, there's not a whole lot that can be done about that, and you're kind of trapped.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really important to make sure that it gets set up right from the start.
What do
Uh,
you put in that, Phil? So let's say I'm someone who's over the threshold and I want to, guard myself so I don't end up in the poorhouse. You create that trust. What actually goes in the trust?
Whatever assets need to get you down below that $130,000 limit.
It can hold anything. It can hold
It can
property, stocks, bonds, cash, all that.
it can hold pretty much anything except for a qualified retirement account. So
Okay.
IRAs, 401ks, 457s, 403bs, all of those types of plans. Those have to be owned by an individual. They cannot be owned by a trust. And that's why there are some exclusions for those accounts as well. But yeah, pretty much anything else could go in the irrevocable trust.
And
Now,
so what do you do when you're meeting with somebody about that? I mean, I I know the answer to this, but I think it helps to flesh this out is you have a discussion, right? A thoughtful discussion. You're doing some analysis of their financial situation. Like, how do you get to the point where you know what should be going in there? Describe that interaction initially with someone.
yeah, so our firm, no matter who you deal with in our firm, we do a free consultation for everybody. So if you think this is an issue, I believe Paul will have a QR code to set up an appointment with myself or anybody else in the firm. Schedule a free consultation, and we'll sit down and talk with you. The talk may be quick, maybe 30 minutes, and maybe a couple hours long, but we'll go over everything that you have and figure out what needs to be done. And one of the things we're going to look at is, okay, if you need an Medi-Cal asset protection trust, does it make sense to dump everything into one trust, or do you need multiple trusts? Not only do you need to protect assets from Medi-Cal and make sure you qualify, but you've got everybody else out there that puts a target on you. If you have a rental property, you don't want to mix your rental property with your stock in the same trust, because if something happens on that rental property, somebody slips and falls and hurts himself and sues you, and your insurance doesn't cover it, because we all know that insurance does everything they can not to pay out, then now your stock's exposed. So we don't want to mix those together in the same trust. So maybe you need to have two Medi-Cal asset protection trusts. Or maybe you need to have one trust that has LLCs inside of it, and each LLC controls a different asset. But it really just depends on the asset, on your goals, and what you want to do with those assets after these trusts are set up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then as we move along here, um, Uh, how about some of these issues, Phil? The income planning, crisis versus proactive planning. How do you address these topics?
Yeah. So ask the question again.
Well, The income planning, treatment of rental property
Okay, income
income,
planning. Yeah. So
business income, ownership structures.
yeah, so we just talked about asset problems. So remember I had mentioned there's like 17 different income limitations that you can qualify for Medi-Cal. So once we've looked at your assets and make sure that you qualify because you're under the $130,000 limit, we need to make sure you're going to qualify on income. If you have rental property, that triggers income. If you have stock and you sell that stock, if you just hold the stock, it doesn't trigger income. But if you sell the stock, it triggers the capital gain, which is considered income. And so all of those things could disqualify you from the Medi-Cal. So we want to look at your income to make sure which plan you're trying to qualify for and potentially trap that income inside the trust so that it doesn't go to you.
Ah,
Maybe it goes to the trust, maybe it goes to one of your beneficiaries, your kids, your spouse, whatever the case may be. But that's something we have to analyze as well.
and um, and then Phil, is it different how you approach the scenario if someone's single versus a married couple?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's much more difficult with a single individual because there are a lot of exemptions for married couples. The there are more assets that exempt with a married couple because you can say that the spouse can have the assets solely in their name and not in your name, and you can be okay. There's also gift benefits too. So I was mentioning earlier, you can only gift 19,000 a year to an individual, but you can gift an unlimited amount to your spouse without triggering a gift tax. Additionally, you could set up if you're married, you could set up the Medi-Cal trust to be for the benefit of your spouse. And then you're really not losing out on anything and things stay much easier. So if you're married, it's a lot easier, but it's still very doable if you're single. It takes a little more planning and effort.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you get into this discussion about the Medi-Cal planning because it is an asset protection discussion in general, and you do a lot of work and the team does, where if you own property, you have an interest in a business, a rental income property, that uh, the asset protection involves Medi-Cal, but also things like shielding you from liability from renters and all the stuff that can happen with a property or business, right? I mean, that is a big picture discussion.
Yeah, typically, if you own a business, you're probably not going to qualify for Medi-Cal at all. Uh,
Okay.
but it is possible, and we could do that. If you have a business, you have a lot more issues, and you can look at one of our many other, great videos on our Wealth Protector TV. But if you have a business, you've got a huge target on your back, and you really need to have an irrevocable trust, a different kind, not a Medi-Cal one, to protect your assets from something that could happen in the business.
And what happens if someone, i- are people like, if, is this for people that are already in Medi-Cal that need to be looking at this, or people moving into Medi-Cal? Like, wait, what stage should people be at to look at this?
Yeah, it's most important for people already in Medi-Cal because if you don't address this by January 1st, you're going to get a letter on January 1st saying, or you could get a letter saying that your health insurance is now canceled and you have no more health insurance.
Crazy.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's really critical for anybody that's not on it already, but needs to go on it. So the look back period is going to be 30 months. And what that means is after January 1st, the planning we're talking about doing today, there's no look back period till December 31st. But after January 1st, if you do this planning, you're going to be disqualified to get onto Medi-Cal for 30 months if you do any of this planning after January 1st.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it on the application, they're going to ask about it. And then if you lie about it, it's a crime. So you definitely don't want to do that. But they will also do some background checks and see. And if you're transferring things like real estate, that's all public record and they can easily see that. So you really want to, if you think you're going to need to go on Medi-Cal within 30 months of January 1st, you need to get this planning done before the end of the year.
Got it. Okay, yeah. And to mention again, up in the chat is a link. If you click on that link, you can get one-on-one, free, no charge with Phil and the team to look at your own situation. And we can do that phone call, Zoom call. So there's a link there. And yeah, Phil, we wanted to give just a kind of a real quick and dirty alert on this and make sure, our people know we are recording this. We're going to get it out to everybody. that wasn't able to attend. And so look for your emails for the recording. Phil, anything you want to say before we kind of sign off?
There's a lot of stuff to consider here, and this isn't a quick process.
Right.
You definitely want to get on this now. You don't want to wait until December 15th. If you wait till December 15th, there's no guarantee that we can actually help you. And even if we can help you, we're going to charge you 2 to 3 times what we would charge if you started now. So make sure to get on this right away. You definitely need, if you have a CPA or a financial planner, they're going to need to get involved in this process as well. We're going to need to do this process. We're going to need to collect a lot of documents from you. So start gathering all your paperwork now and talking to your financial planner, CPAs, and getting the process started.
Right. Right. And if you get on a call with us, I know we're very good at quarterbacking, kind of getting some of those other advisors involved and letting you know how to approach them, or having us help you in some of those areas if you don't have those advisors. We do have tax CPAs and tax attorneys at the firm. So, Phil, this is great stuff. This is a good red flag warning. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks. Thanks
Okay.
for your time, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.